Funeral work teaches you a lot about presence. How some people leave a hole behind so big you can feel it in the air. How some rooms stay full long after the person has gone. It also teaches you silence, not just quiet, but silence. That heavy kind that settles between breaths, between words, especially during the drive. It was a Monday, early spring. Overcast sky, soft wind, the kind of day where everything feels muted. No bird song, no laughter from yards, just the rhythm of tires and the occasional gust through half-budding trees. I was assigned to a local service, small family, small turnout. The deceased was a woman in her late 80s, widowed, lived alone in the same house for 40 years. Her son arranged everything, service at the chapel, then a slow procession to Hillside Cemetery, not far outside of town. I've driven that route more times than I can count. We pulled out after the service. Family cars behind me, hazards on, tight formation. I kept my speed low, respectful. I remember watching the trees pass, all thin and gray, barely leafed, and thinking how this part of town always seems stuck in a kind of time warp. Same cracked sidewalks, same houses leaning just slightly too far to one side. Then in the rear view, I noticed him. Man in the back seat of the hearse, black suit, pale shirt, face turned forward. Not looking at me, not looking at anything really, just present. Now, I've driven a hearse for going on 2 decades. I know exactly how many people are supposed to be in that vehicle at any given time. That morning I loaded the casket myself. I locked the rear cabin. No one else entered. There is no back seat in a hearse, not in the traditional sense. Just that long, silent compartment and a barrier between the front and the rest. But there he was, in the mirror, sitting upright, hands resting on his knees. The kind of posture people hold in churches, still, alert, reverent, no movement, no blinking. I didn't react, didn't turn, just kept driving. Something about the way he sat, he didn't seem like a threat, more like someone waiting. Like he'd been waiting a long time and now the ride had finally come. We reached the gates of Hillside 20 minutes later. The procession pulled in behind me, crawling between rows of old graves and fresh plots. I guided us to the site. The family got out. The pallbearers approached. I stepped out and opened the back. Empty, just the casket. Nothing else, no passenger, no sign that anyone had ever been sitting in that space. Not a scuff, not a shift, not a breath. I stepped back. One of the pallbearers, young guy, probably a nephew, nodded at me as they lifted the casket. He didn't seem to notice anything strange. Neither did the son or the minister who came to say the final words. But I watched as they carried her out, watched the long, empty compartment. And I thought about that man in the mirror. How still he'd sat, how calm. It wasn't until the last prayer was said and the crowd began to drift back to their cars that I noticed something else. On a bench beneath the trees, just beyond the grave, sat a man in a black suit. Not moving, not part of the family, not talking to anyone. Just sitting, the same posture, same presence. And then he was gone. I never saw him walk off. Just looked away for a second. When I looked back, the bench was empty. I didn't mention it, didn't ask around. What would I say? All I know is this. Sometimes we're not the only ones carrying someone. Sometimes someone's been waiting a long time for the ride home, and when it finally comes, they don't ask for directions. They just get in, quiet, grateful, ready. Hello friends, thank you for watching. A special shout out to our subscribers. You keep these eerie stories alive. But here's the thing, only 30% of viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy our content, hitting subscribe helps us more than you know. It takes a second, but makes a huge difference. While you're at it, like and share to keep the chills coming. Thanks again. You made this possible. See you in the next one, if you dare. You drive long enough, late enough, and you start to see things. Sometimes it's nothing more than headlights playing tricks in the mirrors, a shadow that moves the wrong way, a shape by the road that turns out to be a mailbox or a deer frozen in your beams. You learn to blink, refocus, keep moving. But this wasn't like that. It was a Thursday, just past midnight. I was headed back to the lot after a pickup out east, a quiet one, rural, no traffic, no streetlights once you left the main drag. Just the occasional farm porch glowing faint through the trees. Most folks were asleep, and the roads felt hollow. That kind of quiet settles around you like a second skin. No music, just the rumble of the engine and the thrum of tires. I hit a red light at a four-way stop just outside of Granger. Funny thing, even when there's not a soul in sight, I still stop. Habit, maybe respect, maybe fear of a ticket I can't afford. Either way, I sat there idling, tapping the wheel. That's when I saw him. A man standing alone on the curb across the intersection. Tall, still, no motion, no phone, no dog, no cigarette. Just standing there, maybe 30 feet from me, watching. Streetlight above him flickered, but I barely noticed. What got me was the way he stared, not in a threatening way, not curious either, just locked in. His head didn't tilt, his arms didn't move. He just watched me like he was waiting for something. The light turned green. I pressed the gas, slow and steady, drove right through, eyes forward. When I glanced in the mirror, he was gone. The curb was empty. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he turned, maybe he wasn't really watching me. Could have been my mind making more of it than it was. I've seen people out late before, all kinds, but 2 blocks later, I glanced to my right. Passenger seat. He was sitting there, same man, same pale face, same dark coat, same expression. Not looking at me, just staring straight ahead, hands folded in his lap like he belonged there, like he had always been there. I swear to you, I never stopped. I never opened the door. I never heard a sound. I didn't hit the brakes, didn't swerve. I just kept driving. Maybe because if I acknowledged it, if I reacted, it would become real in a way I couldn't undo. I drove in silence, 10 miles, turned onto back roads, past empty fields and hollow barns, moonlight casting silver on the hood. Still, he sat. Still, he stared. At one point, I glanced over again. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. And that's when I saw it. He wasn't breathing. No rise, no fall. Nothing human in the posture. Just the shape of a man who had been still a very long time. I don't know how I made it back to the lot. I parked in the usual spot, cut the engine, sat there, waiting, counting seconds, 5, 10, 15. Then, finally, I turned to look. Passenger seat was empty, no open door, no sign anyone had been there at all, but the seatbelt was drawn across the cushion, buckled in, like someone had been riding with me, like they were making sure to stay safe for the ride. I got out slowly, walked around to the passenger side, opened the door. It was cold. Not cool night air cold, interior cold, like a window had been open, like something old had been sitting there, leaching the warmth from the leather. I unbuckled the belt, closed the door, locked up, and went inside without a word. Next morning, I cleaned the car myself. No one asked why. I didn't say. But that seat, I don't use it anymore. Not for my lunch, not for my jacket, not even to toss paperwork. It stays clear. Because every so often I still see him. Not often, not always, but sometimes at certain lights out the corner of my eye, a figure at the curb watching, and I know better than to look twice. Some riders don't need the door to open. Some rides aren't requested, they just happen. People don't think much about the ride to the cemetery. But for some families, it matters. They want to honor the path their loved one used to walk, or drive, or gaze out on in better days. Maybe it's a favorite route through town. Maybe it passes their old house or the lake where they fished. Whatever the reason, I don't ask questions. I just drive. That morning, I was scheduled to transport a man named William Dearden, mid-70s, longtime resident, worked maintenance for the county roads department. He was well known in his neighborhood, not a big personality, but respected. Quiet kind of man. The kind that knew the name of every tree he passed and never needed GPS to find his way home. His daughter had called the day before, soft-spoken woman, asked if we could take the long way, out of the city, then through the hills, down old Route 39. Said it used to be her father's favorite drive. I told her that wouldn't be a problem. That's one thing I've learned in this job. If the living asks something of you, and it's reasonable, you do it. Doesn't matter if it's inconvenient. This work is about respect. We left the funeral home just after 10. The sky was overcast, soft gray light filtering through. I was alone in the vehicle. The family followed in their own cars behind. I like solo drives, gives me space to think. Nothing but the road and the weight in the back. There's a stillness to it I can't quite explain. It's not silence, not really. It's like the absence of everything but presence. I merged onto the highway, then took the turnoff toward Route 39. It's a winding road that hasn't seen much use in years. Locals say it's where the county forgets to send the plow trucks in winter. It curves and bends and climbs up through a corridor of old trees, some leaning so far overhead they meet above the blacktop like clasped hands. The road was empty, just me, the hearse, and the quiet hum of the tires. About 10 minutes in, the radio crackled. Now, I don't keep the radio on much, usually just soft static, enough to feel like something's there. Music feels disrespectful when I've got someone riding in the back. But this time, the static shifted, like someone was tuning it. Faint warble, then sharp pops, then a voice, clear, flat, male. "This isn't the way I wanted to go." That's what it said. Not a question, not angry, just matter of fact. I felt something tighten in my chest. Reached for the volume knob, turned it down to 0. Still the static, still the voice. "This isn't the way I wanted to go." I pulled over, sat there, engine idling, hands clenched around the wheel. The radio was dead quiet now, just the usual soft hiss of an empty frequency. Nothing else. I looked in the rearview. Nothing had changed. William Dearden's casket was still secured. No movement, no signs of damage, just the steady presence of a man on his final ride. I told myself it was interference. Maybe a pickup from a CB radio, maybe a trucker playing games. But deep down, I didn't believe that. The voice, it didn't come from outside. It came from inside, like it was meant for me. I kept driving. The road dipped into a narrow pass, trees crowding even tighter. And all the while, I kept thinking, was this the wrong route? Had there been a mistake? I remembered the daughter's voice clearly. His favorite road, she'd said. He always said he wanted to go that way one last time. But maybe she misunderstood. Maybe she meant it metaphorically. Or maybe William had changed his mind, never told her. I don't know. But as I rounded the last bend before the cemetery, the radio came alive again, just for a second. Another burst of static, then something else. A sigh, long, tired. The kind a man makes after climbing stairs or sitting down after a long shift. Then silence. I pulled up to the gates, turned off the ignition. The family arrived behind me, got out of their cars and gathered around. I stepped out, walked around to open the back, and I swear to you, for the first time that day, I felt peace in the air. Like the weight had shifted, like someone had finally let go. The burial went as expected. No one mentioned anything unusual. I stood a respectful distance back, like I always do, and waited until they were done. I nodded to the daughter as she passed. She gave me a grateful smile, unaware of anything strange. But on the way back, I didn't take Route 39. I stuck to the main road, and I've kept the radio off ever since. Because sometimes you don't get to ask questions. Sometimes the dead speak, and your only job is to listen. I've been behind the wheel of a Hearse for almost 18 years. It's not a job you dream of doing, not something you talk about at parties, but it's work. Quiet, steady, and necessary. And if you do it long enough, you learn to leave your imagination at the door. Otherwise, it'll eat at you. That night was like 100 others before it. Rain had been falling in fits and starts all day. The kind of drizzle that makes the roads slick, but not enough for anyone to slow down. I'd made the pickup around 7:30, a man in his 50s, found alone in a small apartment over in Southridge. No signs of foul play, no family waiting, just another quiet passing in a quiet place. The coroner had done his part, tagged the tow, signed the paperwork, and I wheeled him into the back like I always do. The interior of the Hearse has a cold sort of comfort to it. Simple, restrained. Vinyl where you expect leather, and metal rollers lining the floor to make the load-in easier. It's a machine built for one purpose, to carry the dead. No music, no passengers, just me and whoever I'm bringing home. I remember merging back onto the highway, the hum of tires on wet pavement, wipers thudding a rhythm. My thoughts were already half at home. I had leftover stew in the fridge and a six-pack waiting, and I was thinking about whether I'd watch the ball game or just sit with the dog in silence. Then it happened. I was rolling past mile marker 47, about 20 minutes from the drop-off point. I always do a mirror check every couple minutes, just a habit. make sure no one's tailgating, check my blind spots, keep the company's insurance in good shape. And there it was, in the rearview mirror, a face, pale, thin, not just pale like someone dead. I've seen hundreds of those. Pale like paper, wax, hollow eyes staring up the aisle between the front seat and the back. Not slack like a body at rest. Focused, like it knew where it was, like it knew where I was. I slammed the brakes, instinct, I guess. Stupid thing to do, middle of the highway. The rear end kicked a little on the wet asphalt, but I managed to steer into it. Brought us to a stop on the shoulder, hazard lights flicking against the trees. I turned around, the back was empty, just like it should be. The man, the body, still zipped up tight in the black vinyl bag, exactly where I placed him. Not a strap undone, not a zipper moved, no signs of anything but routine transport. I sat there a long while, not moving, rain ticking on the roof like fingers on glass. I must have stared into that rear cabin for 5, maybe 10 minutes, expecting, I don't know what, a sound, a shift, something, but nothing came. Eventually I told myself what anyone in my line of work has to tell themselves if they want to keep showing up. It's just fatigue. You see enough death, it gets into your head, makes you see things, hear things, and I'd been working longer hours than usual that month. 2 drivers had quit back to back, and the boss was pressing the rest of us to cover their shifts. So I put it in drive, got back on the road, didn't look at the mirror for the rest of the trip. I dropped him off at the county morgue, signed the logbook, nodded to the night attendant. Nothing unusual. By the time I got back to the lot and turned in the keys, it was pushing midnight. I left the building quietly, the way I always do. But something stuck with me. That face. See, it wasn't the expression that bothered me. It wasn't terror or anger or even sadness. It was recognition. That's what still wakes me up some nights. The look in his eyes, like he knew me, like we'd met before. But I swear to you, I'd never seen that man in my life. I asked around the next day, looked at the intake sheet. His name was Roger Liddell. Lived alone, no next of kin, quiet life, quiet end. But the name meant nothing to me. Or it should have meant nothing. About a week later, I was flipping through one of our old logbooks, looking for a past delivery reference. And I saw it, the name, Roger Liddell. A John Doe case we'd picked up 3 years earlier. Body found out near the river, no ID. Buried through the county's unclaimed program. That's when my hands went cold. I thought it was a coincidence. Had to be, right? Common name. But when I checked the dates, that earlier entry had the same birth date, same general description, even a photo attachment from the police report. Same man, 3 years dead, and I just dropped him off again. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who jumps at ghosts or spins tales for attention. Like I said, I've done this job a long time. I've seen things, real things, that would make most folks lose their appetite. But I don't scare easy, and I don't lie. But I also know what I saw in that mirror. I know what face looked back at me. And I've stopped checking the rear view on night drives, because sometimes the dead don't stay where you leave them. There's a kind of silence in this line of work that's hard to explain to people who don't live in it. It's not just the absence of noise, it's deeper than that. A stillness that creeps in when you're alone with the dead. It hangs in the air, settles in your chest. Most days I've learned to live with it, but some days that silence breaks. This happened a little over a year ago, on a Thursday. Quiet morning, no rain, but the sky was heavy, flat gray, like the color of old ash. I was parked behind the funeral home, waiting for the pallbearers. It was a small service, immediate family only. The deceased was a man in his early 50s, worked in accounting most of his life. Nothing remarkable in his file, just a basic transport from the funeral home to the cemetery. Everything had gone smooth. I arrived early, as I always do, loaded the casket with care, locked the rollers, polished the handles, checked the straps twice. Then I sat in the driver's seat, hands resting in my lap, waiting for the family to arrive. That's when I heard it. Faint at first, like it was coming from far away. Laughter, not loud, not shrill, light, almost playful. The kind of sound you hear on a playground in spring. A child's giggle, high and breathy. Just a few seconds, then silence. I didn't move. I've transported bodies for almost 20 years. I've heard phones go off in pockets, watches beep, even a music box once that someone slipped into a casket. There's always a logical explanation, or that's what you tell yourself. But this wasn't that. There was no toy, no trinket, no reason, and the sound hadn't come from my phone or outside the vehicle. It had come from the back. I turned around slowly, hoping to find something obvious. Maybe one of the staff had come by, maybe someone was near the rear door, maybe anything. But there was no one, just the casket, closed, still, the polished wood faintly catching the dull light through the rear windows. Then I heard it again, clearer this time, like it was right behind me, a giggle, short, sharp, full of something I couldn't quite name, not joy, not mischief, something older, deeper. It sounded wrong, but not in any way I could explain, like it didn't belong to the air it was in, like the sound itself had been trapped, echoing from somewhere it shouldn't reach. And I knew I was alone. I stepped out of the hearse, walked around to the back, heart in my throat, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I unlocked the rear door, slowly lifted it. Silence. The casket sat undisturbed. The straps were secure, no signs of movement, no visitors, no tricks. I even checked underneath. Sometimes people leave flowers or tokens, and I thought maybe something had shifted or rolled loose. Nothing. Just me, the man in the casket, and that heavy gray sky above. The family arrived a few minutes later. 2 sons, both grown, quiet men with tired eyes. They didn't ask about any delays, just nodded at me respectfully, stepped forward with the others, and lifted their father out of the vehicle like they'd done it before, like they didn't expect anything unusual. But I couldn't take my eyes off the casket as they carried it away, and I kept thinking about that laughter. Not because it scared me. I've learned to live with the strange. You have to. What unsettled me was how young it had sounded, joyful even, like whatever had been inside wasn't mourning a death, it was playing in it. But the funeral director told me something the next day, just in passing. Funny thing, he said, when they were prepping the body, he had this small drawing in his jacket pocket. Crayon on folded paper. Looked old, maybe 30 years or more. Little stick figures, a house, a sun. No name on it, no explanation, just a child's drawing, worn thin with time. I didn't say anything. Some rides are for the living, some are for the dead, and some are for things that have been waiting a long time to be remembered. Thank you all for joining me on these journeys. Your support means everything, and I love reading your reactions and personal experiences in the comments. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat or gave you chills, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more haunting stories. Have you ever experienced something similar? Or perhaps you have your own unexplainable story to share? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Each of your stories adds another layer to our growing community of horror enthusiasts. And if you think someone else might enjoy a good scare, don't forget to share this video with them. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories, and remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, if you dare.